Stephanie?
Nope, I just said we're live.
Oh, it makes it sound weird.
I don't know, I didn't know, maybe it was your phone, Dave, and just coincidence. And my phone is having a bus call.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
And next year, neither of them.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Well, maybe one week.
Right,
No, I went up.
that's doable. That is definitely.
See if it affects our attendance.
Until I get another invoice.
Shall see.
Sometimes the bus that's late, 10, the kid goes back in and his parents, you know what I mean? And they say, oh, the bus was done, they go back inside, they sometimes miss it.
So you didn't edit the policy, JB?
The kindergarten entrance? No. I know you said there was a problem with it as it stands. I didn't quite understand, so I would talk about that.
Okay, yes.
That was the,
All right, it's 4 o'clock. Hello and welcome everyone to meeting of the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District Policy Subcommittee. It's 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. In attendance, Rich, are you here?
here?
Sam, are you here? Okay, and me, I'm here. Okay, so we have a quorum. Rich, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so first on the agenda, JV entrance age. I think as everyone who's here knows, and for those who weren't, the school committee referred to us to evaluate policy JV in regards to starting of kindergarteners and the age cutoff. There was a very nice request made to us by a family whose child was only a few days, birthday was only a few days from the cutoff date. So when I read the policy, I saw right away there was a problem with the policy as written, which is why I think it's good that it's coming here. So, so the policy says you have to be 5 years of age before September 1st. But then it also says you must have reached 6 years of age prior to enrollment in grade 1. So school starts before September 1st. So a child who has a birthday on August 29th will be enrolled, hypothetically will be enrolled in grade 1 and not be 6 yet.
I see. However, kindergarten is not a mandatory grade.
No, I'm worried about grade 1. Because
Right.
all students must have been 6 by, so grade 1 might start on August 28th, and if the student's birthday is August 29th, or some day after the first day of school, but before September 1st, they'll be in line to start the first grade, but they won't be, I mean, it'll only be a couple days, it won't be,
Gotcha.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I just, if either the, I mean, we could just, I mean, we could just axe the sentence, or, you know, or just say they must have reached 6 years of age prior to September 1st of the year they would enter, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or move the September 1st date up a little bit so it's more congruous with the first day of school. But I'm not too enthusiastic about moving that date up a little bit. Because like, you know, I mean, like I know families have been looking at that date and planning their lives for their preschool age kids and stuff. And, you know, if we moved the date up a week and then, you know, the parents were like, oh, well, we wouldn't have put them in preschool then. And I could see some problems there.
Agreed.
So, but what is the act, like, is that sentence there because there's some Massachusetts state law?
That they must be 6 years old before enrollment in grade 1?
Yes.
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't think so, but compulsory ed law is that any student who's turning 6 before December of their kindergarten year has to be in school the entire year, full day. So I don't know if there's a connection around the 6 years of age and it's compulsory. I realize not as written, but I wonder if that perhaps was.
So a kid who turns 6 on December 1st, who's in half-day kindergarten, has to then go to full-day kindergarten?
Hold on. Sorry.
And the date used to be December 31st, wasn't it, like years and years ago, decades ago. When I was that,
If we change it that much, there'll be people with pitchforks.
No, I'm saying, I'm saying that used to be the date. So somewhere's in the transposition of going from December 31st to September 1st.
I mean, the only real problem I see here is that I think there needs to be some reconnoiter between when the first day of school is and the date of September 1st.
So if you can get rid of, unless it's by law, you're right, if you can get rid of that and just say September 1st, you must be whatever age by September 1st takes care of it. It's axing the sentence.
So I think it's related to this, regulation 603 CMR 8.02 says each child must attend school beginning in September of the calendar year in which he or she attains the age of 6. So I think that's where the 6 comes from. And it says each school committee may establish its own minimum permissible age for school attendance, provided such age is not older than the mandatory minimum age established by the regulations. So I think what they're saying, I think they're trying to align to that, because
Yeah, but this sentence doesn't agree with that, right? This sentence is, so that statement from the regulation is inclusatory, and this statement is exclusionary.
right, okay,
So we could just change the wording.
right.
Right?
So
All
how about-
students who have reached the age of 6 by September 1st must be enrolled.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we want to say enrolled in grade 1?
I would.
So must be enrolled in school full-time, or just delete the sentence? Do we even need the sentence there?
It sounds like to me, that they want the kids to be 6 when they get to first grade. So why don't we just change the second date? To be consistent with, 5 on the 1st, 6 on the 1st.
Well, if they're starting kindergarten when they're 5 by September 1st, then they're going to naturally be 6 so instead of saying prior to enrollment, 6.
We could just take the language right from the regulation and say, instead of this second sentence, each student must attend school beginning in September of the year in which they attain the age of 6, and leave it, not say that it has to be kindergarten or first grade, because the regulation doesn't say what grade they need to be in.
Okay. I like that.
And the reason that the full date is because we have a preschooler who's turning 6 sometime next year. And the mom wanted to have the student only attend partial day, half day. That's why I was thinking full-time,
Got it. Okay.
because I said no.
Each student must attend.
Each child must attend school beginning in September of the calendar year.
Means they could take off August 28th and 29th if we start early.
Right.
So they have the prerogative to not start until September 1st by regulation.
Correct.
Okay. And parents do not need to send their kids in for kindergarten. is
Correct,
what you're telling me.
correct,
Parents can just choose to have the kids start with grade
correct.
one. Okay.
In which they attain the age of 6.
Okay. Well, that doesn't violate any stuff. What do you guys think?
I agree. And I did listen to the parents' very eloquent request, and I did agree with what you guys concluded, at least then, is that, you know, this, it's up to, I agreed with our current rules, you know, not making the exceptions all the time unless there's, what John said before, at the meeting.
Well, the exceptions thing, now we have to talk about that.
So,
So, go ahead, I want to hear what your perspective is on this.
so one of the things that I had said at that meeting is, I'd like to look into the Connecticut process to see what it is. The other thing I said at that meeting is I would be opposed to any kind of evaluation process because it's already hard for us to meet the statutorily required evaluations we need to do. So I looked at Connecticut and they do have a waiver process and it's based solely on evaluation. Apparently they were moving away from a prior law that said the school committee gets to rule on waiver requests. But I see signs of what I would call administrative difficulty in implementing this new law because there is an advisory from the State Department of Education in Connecticut saying that they will not give districts guidance or will not identify an assessment that they should use in order to implement the law to decide whether or not students are eligible for kindergarten. However, they do require districts to make sure that their assessments are valid and reliable and holistic and that they are in many areas, including cognitive and social, emotional, physical development and health, and that they're culturally and linguistically appropriate, and that they need to be used uniformly throughout the district. So to me, that is a concerning, they're not
And used
able to
uniformly
identify.
throughout the district.
They're not able to tell you what you should do, but are able to identify ways in which you could mess it up.
Yes.
And once again, this is the state of Connecticut,
Correct,
and we are in the state of Massachusetts.
correct.
So they're trying to deal with their own laws, and we have our own laws.
Correct.
So, right now, this doesn't open the door to any, what do you think if a request is made to you with a recommendation letter by the kid's preschool teacher that they feel that they're ready for kindergarten, that, the superintendent could make a judgment call?
I did,
I know that's a double-edged sword, right? Because then, you're gonna have a bunch of people banging down your door that could get angry.
I did find at least one example of another Massachusetts district that has what I would call an administrative process like that rather than an evaluation process. The person who worked under that regime, who sent it to us, said it's not a good idea. They don't like it because it leads to conflict with families. However, they do have a process that we could use for a model if you wanted to take a look at that. I think it's Attleboro. However, they say that the determination can be made on things that have nothing to do with the readiness of the child. Like one of the things the policy explicitly says is, well, the administrator should look at whether there's availability of space. And, the older children need to take precedence over the younger children. And so
Fair.
that
That's a
would
concern.
seem to be a preferable process to me. There will be a level of arbitrariness in that as well, because, some years we might say yes to a student who is less developmentally appropriate than other years where we say no to a child who may be more developmentally appropriate just due to the availability of space. But if that's something that the committee wants to entertain, I think that would be preferable to going through and evaluating kids to try to make a determination.
I definitely agree we need guardrails. And the guardrails has to do with how it's going to affect the kids who are legitimately there under our policy. I don't want to overcrowd. And it's expensive to put your kid in daycare. And believe me, if there's an opportunity for people to apply, they're gonna apply. And we need to protect the class sizes in those kindergarten and first grade classes. I think what we talked about will take care of the first grade. But if we're gonna accept an appeal process, we need to have serious guardrails that protect the teachers and the students who legitimately, under our current policy, are there. I don't wanna overcrowd and overburden the teachers and the paraprofessionals who are working with these kids.
Right.
Is it, you know, they said at graduation, you know, this is the biggest class we're gonna have in the next 16 years, based on projections. So the only thing I would say is there ever a point where we need kids, you know, that where things turn different, where we only have a handful of kids in kindergarten, and we could use some extra kids to get more money and more funding and things like that.
It's an interesting point. You know, I keep thinking about Lisa's comments from the meeting, you know, about potential challenges for the teachers. You know, I mean, you know, they've got a classroom there full of kids theoretically at, you know, a certain level, but in reality there's a huge gradient of levels, right? And then by us allowing the tripling in of younger kids, we're only making the gradient wider and making everything more challenging for the teacher, which isn't just rough on the teacher, but could detract from the educational experience of the other students in the class.
Totally agree.
It's concerning. So,
I think there are two sets of guardrails that you could put into a policy if you were so inclined. One would be thinking about, well, what is the range that is even appealable? You know, like, and that also is going to lead to the same problem you have now. Like, I think in the Attleboro policy it says that to be considered for an appeal, the student has to at least turn 5 in the month of September. So, I mean, that's one guardrail. The other guardrail is you could put, if, you know, the appeal could only be considered if it would not cause class sizes to exceed some number that you pick, which is also arbitrary but meaningful. I mean, there's a reason why we like to try to keep class sizes as small as we can in the younger grades.
yeah. I don't know. I have had mixed feelings on it. You know, I mean, I want to give that. I mean, if that family really wants their kid to go ahead, I want to be able to have there be a way for them to go ahead. But I foresee so many problems.
It's
Like looking at the entire student body as a population and all the teachers and all the problems that's going to happen. I mean, you know, that's an interesting guardrail. Like if their birthday's in September, or you know, within 2 weeks of September 1st, you know, they could appeal. But then once again, the basis for the appeal and the decision, we can't put, I think we would regret it if we put in a policy a certain number of kids for a classroom size, because of how dynamic things are with the budget and the student population.
no matter what you do on the date, you'll find somebody sitting before us saying, my kid was missed by 1 day, he was September like 16th, so he misses the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do,
You're right.
It's always gonna be somebody on the border, on the cusp.
You're right. If for that one kid, the school committee wanted to approve them, does the school committee even have that prerogative at this point?
I think they'd have to change the policy.
So right now, no.
Right.
So they made an appeal to the school committee, but the school committee itself really, in our current policies, isn't empowered, unfortunately, to.
Correct. But I understood their appeal to be, will you reconsider your policy? Will you look at it to see if this is the right date, you know, or if this is how we really want to set the entrance age?
But it was explained to them that a policy's gotta have 3 readings, and
Correct.
You know, which, even if we change the policy, it's not gonna
Well,
help.
there was the
child.
rush thing you said, there was some sort of override.
You could, yeah, you could suspend the rules on the readings.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Once you do it to one person, you know, it's everybody that wants to, there'll be lots of them.
So, all right, so they asked us to look at September 1st.
Mhm.
How does September 1st fall in terms of the range of school districts in Massachusetts?
I don't know that, because I haven't done that research. I can tell you that interestingly, in the Connecticut law, September 1st is their date.
Okay.
You know, the state of Massachusetts, the date really is December 31st still for compulsory education, which is interesting. And at some point in time, I know that that was the rule when I started school, December 31st, you know, that was the cutoff. So at some point in time, individual districts, it must have rolled it back to September 1st at some point in history.
So turning 5 by December?
Well, the rule is, what John said, is you have to offer school compulsory if by December 31st you're 6 years old.
Any, I misspoke, any time in the calendar year, you're turning 6.
You have to be offered full day.
Compulsory ed would be full day.
In the calendar year, which is January 1st to December 31st.
But our
I think that's
kindergarten
what
is
you're
full.
Oh, I
First
see, I
one.
see, I see.
All of
therefore,
our
December
kindergarten classes
I'm
are full
thinking-
day, right?
Correct.
Correct. So we don't have an issue because they're full day.
We're a subset, we're less strict than the state law. Since the state law is easier to get away with not sending your kid to school, in theory. You know, for those 3 months, kids that are born in September, October, November, in theory, by the state, don't have to go to school. That we're saying they do. Or not do, that they can. But they
Yeah.
do. It'd be interesting, did we always have, I wonder for history, if at some point in time in the past, we moved it from December 31st to September 1st?
I don't know. This is only my second year on the committee.
I mean,
It's
sometimes
interesting because our kindergartners start later,
1897 or whatever.
so they would start September 4th-ish.
Then they start.
Just thinking about, I was thinking in my head, like if you said the
You're
first
right.
day of school, because that could be, to your point, August 29th.
But it
A
never
little
is for
earlier,
kindergarten.
but it never is for kindergarten. They come in later.
They come in after,
But what are the, in my old district, same thing, although the teachers would call the parents and the children in, and they would see them all in that time, that 3 or 4 days when they're not in
They
school.
do, right.
But, and that's an assessment that, if we're gonna do an assessment, we ought to give those teachers, if they are in fact meeting with these parents and kids, a voice in that assessment. And if we got some, you know, MCAS kind of a assessment, I think we can't just rely on something paper and pencil. If our teachers have had the opportunity to meet the parents and the child, and they also would have a good idea of what the range is. Because if they're meeting all of them, if it's required that the parents need to show up with their child and meet with the teacher, and I don't know if that's the case here,
It
but
is.
that was the case back in Springfield. That's where the teachers started saying, all right, looks like I'm gonna go from here to here rather than from here to there.
Mhm.
I think the assessments are just a can of worms. If you looked at all those restrictions on the assessments, it's just opening ourselves up for a suit sometime that you didn't follow this, you didn't follow this, you didn't follow that, and it's too arbitrary and it's not fair, and then are you gonna make the assessments? Who's eligible for the assessments? What's the cutoff date for that? There's always a cutoff date someplace. I'm waiting to leave it the way it is, you know, with, unless we open up a can of worms.
Well, except for the
John-
change to the sentence.
Except for that change, for the technicality.
I think I'm with you, Rich. I don't think we can change this.
We have enough to deal with without adding something else that will put us at odds with some people in the community.
Okay. I mean, we don't have the manpower for the assessments. And and I understand what you mean, the assessments could happen during that meet and greet with the kindergarten teacher on those days, but then it's a bit late if the assessment becomes a thumbs down.
My thought was the
Because the
assessment.
preschools will be all full up, they won't find a spot.
You can't do what they said for assessments in one meeting, that's a lot.
No, I was saying the meet and greet is added to what, if we were going in the direction of an assessment, I think the assessments ought to be happening in the summer. Before there's even,
When we don't have a lot of staff.
And we don't have any evaluative staff.
The other question is, maybe
Any
some year we
of
wanna
those.
offer a
We don't
PK.
for the summer.
I mean, that's really what we're saying, just some year do we wanna offer a PK? Then you open up to a whole other year, a whole nother, if we have space, you know, and,
I think that may actually have been a part of the Connecticut law, if I remember correctly. I think they said the appeal needs to be filed like by the spring of the year prior to the time, probably so that they had school staff around to conduct assessments.
Do we have a policy for kids being advanced a grade? Like, you know, every once in a while, a really smart kid, right, the teachers might recommend that they skip a grade.
I think we do have that in a policy somewhere.
I do have,
And then the question is, could that policy, would that policy potentially include one of our own preschool teachers? Who might then, you know, under that policy being skip a grade, you know, this kid should be in kindergarten next year.
the meeting was to 4:45, and I do have an event, that's why we did it, so I don't know how much you wanna move to the next side.
While they're looking at that question, let's talk about the ID badges, which is the only other thing here. So if you guys remember, this came up for discussion at the meeting. It didn't seem like people had strong feelings on it. They referred it to us, but there is no policy on this, right?
Correct.
But there's policies regarding visitors in the school. But I think kind of somebody with an ID badge isn't a visitor in the school, right? You know, someone empowered with an ID badge would could walk into the school like they owned the place or like they worked there, right? You know, I thought it was a nicety to be given an ID badge when I joined the committee. I wasn't expecting it. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool and all, but then as I reflect on it, the thing that I get hung up on is I don't think it's a good idea for someone to have an ID badge that's not been quarried. And while I think all the school committee members would probably pass quarry, or if they're not already quarried, but the school committee members are elected by vote, and then, you know, if they're supposed to have a ID badge and then they fail quarry, you know, I don't know, I think we
I
probably.
have no problem being a visitor to school, if I go to school, I have zero problem with that. Introducing myself, saying, hey, I'm here today, and I'd like a visitor badge, no problem. And not having an ID, not having the thingy that you do.
do those IDs open doors?
Huh?
Do the IDs open doors? I see teachers.
So right now they're
By default.
programmed for evenings, right?
It does open the district door.
They don't
Yeah.
have, so to answer your question, that's how we use them. Technically, you could have an ID badge that doesn't have permission to open doors. Like, it doesn't have to open doors, if that makes sense. Like, you could have a school committee badge that identifies you as a school committee member, but it doesn't give you any building access. Or you could do both.
I don't know, and you guys, in your experience, other school committees don't seem to have badges. So it's also a cost, right? Each of these badges is probably $20 or something, right?
Roughly, yeah.
And I don't see most of the members of the committee wearing their badges or bringing them with them.
Never used it once, I know where it is though.
I don't have
So
one.
I made a point to wear it every time until this discussion came up, and then I stopped wearing it. Because, you know, like in the hospital, if you see someone who doesn't have an ID badge on, you're supposed to question, are you supposed to be here? Where are you going? It's a security thing. So when I received the badge, I kind of said, okay, I'm gonna keep it on, expecting someone's gonna question. But John quite correctly pointed out, we are coming in for public meetings, anyone is entitled to come in for the public meeting, and, so.
So what is the question before us?
Well, I don't know why they referred it to us, because there's not really a policy on it. So I guess the question is, do we have an interest in writing a policy about school committee members having an ID badge? Or are we willing to let it rest that there is no policy, and perhaps the tradition going forward might be no ID badges?
I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm fine with that.
and we treat it like any other visitor. You go to the office, you get your visitor's pass.
I don't think there's anything to vote on for that, right? Because so, all right, so I'll just give, if you could put a little note there to remind me on the agenda for the next school committee meeting to say that, we discussed it and we didn't think that it would be relevant to write a policy, and, and the committee should then decide whether they wanted the tradition to be, we would be fine to allow the tradition to die out. And then the committee can.
They're gonna take my badge from me.
To answer your question about the policy regarding kindergarten or promotion of students, so it's policy IKE. It's called promotion and retention of students. It says students will normally progress annually from grade to grade. Exceptions may be made when, in the judgment of the professional staff, such exceptions are in the best educational interest of the students involved. Exceptions will only be made after prior notification and explanation to each of the students' parents, guardians, but the final decision will rest with the building principal.
Those exceptions to keep the kid back or to double promote the kid?
Well,
Or both?
it's neutral the way it's written. I can say as a practical matter, it is almost exclusively used for retention, to hold the kid back.
The kid ever get double
But it
promoted
could be
here?
used to move a kid out.
I think as it's written, it could be.
Okay, so, so you guys can talk to the preschool teacher in regards to that one particular student. We have a policy, and if they felt that the kid could be advanced, then they could be advanced.
That would be if he's already in school here.
He is.
He is.
He's in our preschool.
Okay.
So, now I don't know if, the parent's perspective and the teacher's assessment aren't always in alignment, I know that. I don't know, does that seem reasonable?
I think it's aligned with our policies, and then it will be up to the building principal ultimately to decide.
Which in this case, I think is Ms. Milberg.
I do think, there is another element of arbitrariness, which I guess I'll just throw out there, which is if you don't happen to attend our
Yes.
public preschool, then
Yes.
there's very little professional staff to talk to about this. So that may come up at a later point.
And if you're switching buildings, like let's say a kid goes from 9th grade, I assume that, which principal is it? The sending or the receiving?
It would be, I guess it would be the principal who knows the student. Is this preschool that the student attends the same as the school in which the student would attend K? So you have to pick which principal.
I don't believe so. I can double check, but I think even in their presentation, I think they talked about.
So maybe just a communication to the preschool teacher and both of the principals involved, saying that the school, that our policy remains the same, but they have the ability to advance the student if they wanted to, if they thought it was appropriate, and in the best educational needs of the student, which.
And in this instance, I would refer to the student's current principal, because if it is two buildings, our new principal would just be joining us on July 1st.
Unless we would
And
wanna-
we're in, with that policy, there's no date. The kid could be 3 years old if we thought he could be double promoted.
Technically, yes, because that's when they start preschool.
So, but
That policy might be the next policy that comes before us. For review.
Yes, and that, we could look at that to see, I mean, right now, it doesn't explicitly have an exception in it for the start of kindergarten. So, which reasonably it could, but right now it doesn't, so. I think you might want to also include the new building principal, because,
Oh, of course.
you know, I mean, they might not have a lot of assessment value, but it would probably be good to at least allow them to have veto power if they want, if they think, if they feel strongly against it.
Mhm.
But, I mean, I don't know, and as I said at the meeting, my experience with 5 kids, I think it's better for the kid to wait until next year, but
Yeah, I have a bunch of September kids.
I'm not their parent, and, you know, so, and I didn't work with the kid in class, but we have a teacher that did,
Mhm.
so.
Okay.
Anything
We
else?
need to
Oh,
vote.
we need to vote, okay, so, I'm looking for a motion, to accept the modified, policy JEB, entrance age.
So move.
Rubric second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Passes unanimously.
We have a lot of agreement in the school committee usually.
Huh?
There's a lot of agreement in the school committee usually.
It's not always that way. All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, we are adjourned. Look at that, 36 minutes. Was that my fastest policy meeting? Is that my
Maybe.
shortest of
I'll
the
have
year?
to check the